In this episode, we are celebrating. We have done 350 podcasts. Yes, we have 350 podcasts in Spanish and Portuguese. And Diseño Diáspora is today the biggest oral archive of design stories in Spanish. So it's time to explore and renovate ourselves. Diseño Diáspora will always be a podcast mainly in Spanish, but once a month we will do an episode in English. There are many reasons. My life has always been multilingual, including English, so to make some episodes of a podcast in English is natural. I know that my English is clumsy and I have a strong Argentinian accent, but hope this is bearable and even sometimes enjoyable for some of you. Another big reason is that I have a lot of dear colleagues with I have always been working in English. I also want to interview them. I started Diseño Diáspora by interviewing my friends and near colleagues and little by little expanding to a wider community of social designers. I will do the same with this English track. First, I will interview my dear friends and colleagues and little by little expand the limits. This interview is to my dear friend Michail Galanakis. He's an architect and researcher specializing in public space, specifically in making public space accessible. We worked together years ago and he has been an inspiration and guide in my work. My name is Mariana Salgado. This is Diseño y Diáspora.
Hello, my name is Michail Galanakis, which is a Greek name, of course, and comes from the island of Crete, where we cut all these akis endings. So we have Galanakis, Lambathakis, and so on and so forth. What am I? Well, what am I? I'm terminally ill cancer patient who is preparing to die in Finland. And I have been working in Finland for 22 years after I did my PhD and trying various things and projects in Academy of Finland and whatever. And now I was most recently at the Aalto University as a course teacher for a master program in urban studies and planning. My background is in architecture and industrial design, in sustainable industrial design research. And the two diplomas are one from Greece and one from Holland. And then I spent some time in Greece after I finished my second master and realized that things weren't that great. So I decided to apply for a PhD in the totally unknown Finland. The reason was always that I wanted something closer to the social aspects and values of design.
You invited me to do a project in the East Helsinki. It was a group of architects and me, and you were in that group of architects that wanted to do something in connection to multiculturalism in that area, because that area had like around 30% of immigrants, which is a lot in terms of Helsinki, which is where normally there is not such a lot of immigrants. So do you want to tell me?
Yeah, sure. Well, that was basically, it started with a few architects, all of us from immigrant background, most of them working, I think. I mean, at least the one who started, Mustafa Guler, was an urban planner in the city of Helsinki. And we started with a small number of people, and we started thinking, what can we do and what would be the agenda? And everything fit in very quickly, as I remember. The only thing we needed were more expertise and more time and more expertise, basically. So you were one of the non-architects that were invited, and thankfully you could do it. Then there was a social worker And then there was an expert of Somali affairs, because Somalis were people that were interested, our interest in that area. There were many. The area was Someri Rastla. And that was also an area that had attracted my attention earlier on. So that's how also the connection with me came up. It ended up to be World Design Capital Helsinki. Helsinki.
Yeah, we got funding for that from the World Design Capital.
You're right. So we got that award or grant. They were, of course, barely enough to cover anything, but at least they could cover some expenses. So that's expensive events and activities. And all activities and events were about participation in urban planning of an area that has a lot of multicultural issues, families, and it has a lot of multicultural families, but they are silent.
Yeah, but in my opinion, the project started to be super interesting when we have decided to support the activists in the area, because there was a group of activists that wanted to defend the Greenland, because the city of Helsinki was going to build on the top of the Greenland, so meaning like destroying the forest. And we said, okay, we can come up with like an alternative master plan that is not the one presented by the city of Helsinki to the city council. And we worked together with these different groups to get them to design with them, and we were actually co-designing with them.
Yes, yes. And for me, the biggest problem was how the locals, who were all Finns, white Finns, and they were the activists, they were actually pushing over for the process of maintaining the green and the parks areas. And all those multicultural families were really left out. So that was the issue that some of us had with the setup of the area, and we were trying to figure out how to create some opportunities for this kind of dialogues to emerge, even in schools. You did workshops that were fantastic, and everyone will remember them.
And the school was in itself very multicultural, so it was super nice because all the kids were giving us alternatives and ideas of what they wanted to see in the area. Yeah. And then also, I remember we had like one big workshop where there were like 50 persons, participants. And then there was a big group of Somalis that they came with because we had funding, we could have a translator. So there was a big group of women that they took the building blocks and the Lego pieces, and they make a proposal, but they have never seen like a drawing from up of the city, so they make a whole proposal on the top of the forest because they thought, well, if there is buildings there, then let's build here, because and it was super interesting, because then when we asked, but you really want to destroy the forest, then they were like, no, 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 on the contrary, we enjoy a lot, and they explain how they take walks in the forest and they grill there and everything. So it was super interesting how unprepared we were, right? Because we didn't thought about, like, of course, not everybody understand a map.
Absolutely. And that's a great naivety that we have, which is borderline between goodness and I don't know what else. But, to actually present something to people you've never met before, and you assume that they might be illiterate, and to present them maps with the very good dimensions and everything, and expect from them to relate to them is quite something.
And to draw on the top of
And to
them
draw,
and
yeah,
put like
yeah. How
wooden
big is your
pieces on the
house?
top.
How big is your house? I don't
Yeah,
see it.
but I remember that also the discussion with them was super important because, for example, one of the issues that they said that they were very interested is that if they build new buildings in the area, they really need like a cultural center or a big center for them because their families are very numerous and they cannot do big gatherings for that for them is very important. And I thought like, well, these type of open processes are very important to get to know what they need, right? Because it didn't occur to me that of course if you have eight children and then your family had also eight children and we get together, we need a super big space.
Yeah, yeah. But Mariana, the fact that we asked them about, the fact that we realized that they couldn't work with the proper plans, it could only happen if we had managed to speak with them, and we managed to speak with them. If you didn't speak with them, we wouldn't know that they don't understand the maps. So it was important that these kind of meetings happened, and we understood misunderstandings.
Yeah. And also I remember that it was not easy to convince them to come. And in that role, it was super important the work of the social worker because without her, we couldn't have get into the courts association, into the Somalis. I mean, there were a lot of different groups there that we couldn't have outreach without her.
Yes, yes. And I forgot Dina Fuad from now Malaysia. She was with us and she was amazing. I mean, she did a whole report about healthcare issues, and yeah, and it is very important that all these people kind of found interest. They didn't find financial interest, but they found interest in the project and the validity of it, and they came and they actually tried to put a contribution.
Yeah, and for us it was a big eyes opening because normally we tend to work in within groups of architects or groups of. So for me it was the first time that I was working with a social worker together in the team, and I understood that I do not do enough of an effort to outreach people, right? That I and in especially when you are talking about if you really want to have like diversity in this type of workshops, then you need to have people in like completely concentrated on thinking strategies for inviting them in the right way.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I'm trying to remember if we had any other groups in Meriasla that showed some interest.
The courts, the we were working with the union courts, yes.
The Kurds, yes, of course, of course. The Kurds, yes, that was quite amazing,
And
actually.
we did a super nice workshop with them in which they were telling us how they were enjoying the neighborhood and how do they. I remember that we were super interested in how they want to see in the future in the forest area and how they would think in the whole area. And they were like, well, we are hoping to get back to Kurdistan. So our ideas of them like appropriating the area, they were it was nice and naive from us because we didn't know that in fact what they want is to come back to their land, right?
But the problem is if we'll make it. Yeah, because they get married, they have children, then life goes on, then return to. Anyway, what I also find kind of saddening and kind of a sorrow thing, no, anyway, saddening thing is that we never went back, really. We went once or twice and that was it. And of course, I don't know if it's understandable or if that's the way things should be, but these are how things happen, it seems.
Well, the thing is, at the moment, you don't have any more resources to have, for example, the translator to work with the Somalis, and we couldn't connect, right?
In that sense, you're right, but that's what makes me upset also how are the resources missing when the problems still exist?
This interview is part of the list D&D in English, Arquitectura para el cambio, Grecia y Diseño, Diseño en Finlandia, and Diseño inclusivo. The lists are mainly in Spanish, as these lists are the way we are classifying the episodes. As we have so many episodes, we want to be able to guide our audience in the search for materials. The lists are an attempt to put some order and make them easier to find. We have lots of these lists on our website and in Spotify. You can consult them. The one on Diseño inclusivo, inclusive design, is a recent one, as we will publish soon a series on the topic. Normally, lists come from series. We do series of podcasts in collaboration with researchers on one topic. And we have done already one on design and democracy with Federico Vaz, one on design and futures with Domenico Di Siena, on transbiotics with Ricardo Amaste, on design and childhood with Jorge Raedo, on access to justice with Santiago de Francisco Vela. I do some series alone also, as the one on Fab Labs and Guatemala and design. Afterwards, I continue interviewing on the same topic, or it happens so. I add the episodes to the list. This is how sometimes on one topic I gather a lot of them. For example, in the area of design and health, we have already 33 interviews. These are interviews to designers working in different fields, always with others from other fields in a transdisciplinary way, uncovering designers' work in the diaspora or in their countries of origin, Spanish or Portuguese speakers till now. Lately, we have been publishing books and compiling interviews on the same theme. We have published 3 books till now, one on design and health with 25 interviews, another on design and innovation laboratories, and a third and most recent one on design and territories. This last one tells about the collaboration between designers and indigenous Afro-Americans or rural communities in Latin America. Let's now continue listening to Michail, that has a lot to tell. I would like to talk with you about your research. And one of the things that for me is super interesting in your research is the concept of space unjust. So why do you propose the concept or the term space unjust?
Well, I guess it has to do with the background of my own as a child from a low class family in Greece, where I had to negotiate all the territories and all the codes of behavior with people and how to be accepted for for who I was, which I wasn't as a sensitive boy child to be probably gay as it became. So that whole background in a very patriarchal, small Greek city, for some reason, gave me these ideas of moving to space and feel fair, feel just, feel okay. Because from a childhood, I didn't. There were many occasions where fellow students or, students, friends, peers would behave badly to me.
But how, give me an example how the public space influenced that.
But that was in public space, because at home I was very happy. At home I was very safe. Outside of the home, school, at the football field, if they would take us, or outside, I would, and I don't mean, of course, from 5 years old. I'm talking about when I could go for a walk with my friends. So also a bit later. But school, for instance, which was a very public space to my idea, was very much giving me this kind of wrong ideas about public space and justice. And of course, I wasn't aware of all this. I became much aware later.
Okay, yeah. When you talk about a patriarchal city, what are you referring to?
I'm referring to these places where you have the cafes mostly for men, that you have the mothers taking care of the children, and the fathers not so much. I'm talking about the way the men talk to women in public and in private. And in my upbringing in the 80s and 70s and 90s, I could see how Greek men would just not tolerate any forward thinking from women. It would be like unheard of, and they would just tell them characterizations and common. Meanwhile, women were taking care of everything basically, because they have the actual power and they do everything, house and bringing up the kids. And
so during a part of your life, you were like working as an architect, right?
Yeah.
And were you designing public spaces also?
Well, at some point, yes, we did. After I graduated, I did a project which was quite a big project for the second largest city in Greece, with under a woman architect, Greek, and a team of very young architects like myself. So we were like 10 young architects, around 30 or less, and that architect, the main one. It was a very eye-opening experience when I saw how architects work in all good intention, with all goodwill, but not really considering the reality that happens around them. So we had something like 10, I said, young architects. I don't remember one of us to talk about wheelchair users in that space that we were designing, which was a large scale public space. So not even once.
And you were in that moment aware of all this? Could you bring these issues or not?
No, we didn't. It was mid-90s and 1995 it was. And we were, yes, all, young, agile, thinking of postmodernism and Zaha Hadid and all those, new things happening in space, and how to provoke, how we move in the city and how we perceive the city and all these things. And we didn't think that, okay, there are also wheelchair users, that they have to use those streets and pedestrian streets actually that we're making. And they're in the middle of a international supposedly exhibition area, where there would be exhibition of products, of services in the future, and this kind of thing. And we didn't really think of those people.
And how did all this awareness and all this activism came to your profession?
In fact, you started thinking, okay, at some point you started thinking, okay, so I haven't willingly abandoned the wheelchair users and the people with handicaps, but it has happened. I mean, I didn't do it on purpose, but it happened. I haven't abandoned women who have been raped or who have been harassed in public spaces, but it has happened. I haven't willingly done all that, because I am a good person at the end, in the core. So I don't think that I have bad nuances, but I have done all that. So I started thinking that, well, there is a need for this kind of thinking, because we forget all these people. we forget the minorities more and more. So slowly I started becoming more and more aware. I realized that, architecture is a very important science or art, but it's also a very picturesque, very illustrative thing. So it doesn't necessarily address social needs, and social needs are what also we need. It's not aesthetic needs, but also social needs. And those, I think, we just kind of push around, because architects by themselves and architects, let's say, yeah, that's what I've studied, are more into that kind of line of professional or creative idea of, making something look nicer. But I don't think it's enough.
Well, the most famous architects and they are always the one doing fantastic shapes, right? They are the ones doing these kind of astonishing buildings that they provoke because of their aesthetic values, not because of their functional ones in general.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. And I'm not 100% sure that, one is better than the other. It's just that I personally feel that there is a very strong need for the social aspect with the design always, because, well, without design you don't have architecture. But the social aspects, and of course it's a tricky thing because people don't understand, okay, so what am I supposed to do? But there are ways.
But do you think that in a way the social, taking in consideration these social aspects, are a way to enrich yourself as an architect?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then you went to do a master degree in Holland, right? In the Netherlands.
Yeah, it was when I realized that architecture was okay, but it was too large scale, because we're doing also urban planning in Greece. So somehow I felt that I wanted more to do something with a smaller scale of people's interaction and environments and things. And so I went to design school. I was accepted, and I went there. And of course, after I was the only architect, and after a while, well, they made it clear to me that, well, you have all this knowledge in architecture that you can't just forget and put into objects. So I went back to space.
So you were kicked out, or you yourself decided to go out? How was it?
No, not at all. Actually, I had got money from the Greek state, and it was a big event for me. The change, that change. But what I think they realized was, okay, I was doing something new, from architecture to design and sustainable design, especially late 90s, talking about sustainable design. It was the beginning of sustainable design for education. So I was at the beginning of sustainable design. That nowadays sustainable is everything. Well, there we're actually trying to figure out what it was. But anyway, so that led me to sustainable public spaces, uh, and um, and actually it was very kind of a right way to move for myself. It was kind of coincidental in the sense that, you do things in life, and you're not always sure that there will be people around you, that they will help you, that you'll have the social capital to. And I never had that, because I come from, as I said, from a low class working family, so in Greece. So I never had this kind of this support. And at school in Holland, it was a new program. I think I was the second year, so there was a little bit of upheaval, like what is going on, and how to establish it, this program. So I felt I was a bit alone. I was doing whatever I wanted, you know. We're all doing kind of whatever we wanted, so we didn't have so much of supported guidance. And anyway, what I did, I think, was very important to me, but I don't know if it was important to anyone else.
What did you do?
I looked into 4 concepts of sustainable public spaces, from green compatible space, from IT spaces, from duration spaces. So I used I think four concepts from sustainable industrial design, and I brought those concepts into public space. And I illustrated them, I argued about them, I saw what they could be. I thought they were very interesting. What I was doing, I thought was very interesting, but I don't think anyone else thought so. But it's okay.
But you were accepted to do a doctoral degree.
Yeah, but these things I don't think matter so much. Because there's so much scholarship in the world, especially now, that if you don't have the social capital to support that research that you are doing, like big deal, it will just go under the seat.
You mean the social capital is that the people around the
academia, your people, academia, colleagues, family, friends.
Yeah, like that they would support what you are doing.
Exactly.
But then when you did your doctoral research, you were researching a lot about the immigrants' point of view, right? So how do immigrants see the city?
Yeah, it was the time that I arrived in Helsinki, again with a scholarship from Greece to do my PhD. I had never been to Helsinki before. I didn't know anything, very little about the School of University of Art and Design Helsinki, but I've heard enough. Let's say that what they do is very kind of new and whatever. So I took the opportunity and I went from Greece to Finland. And what I realized was that it was the beginning of the period where Somalis had become a bit of a problem as immigrants in Finland. And for some reason, because of course, I was looking again into public space and things in public space and people in public spaces, I started working with or looking into Somalis more. And finally, they became my main, let's say, immigrant group to concentrate on in Helsinki areas and see how they behave in public space. What do they believe of public space? What others believe of public space with Somalis inside? I mean, Finns. And it was a very interesting experience again, because I had very little help, very little support, social support, for instance, again. And this time I'm talking about scientific support as well. So I have to go to the University of Helsinki and ask support from them, because the University of Art and Design wasn't so much specialized. So, but they wouldn't let me go. They wouldn't let me go to another university. They just would keep me. I mean, it was interesting that I had this proposal from Helsinki University, but not from Aalto.
So Helsinki University wanted you to be there.
Yeah. I mean, at some point they said, well, why don't you think of changing? And I didn't, because I thought that Aalto had more freedom artistically.
In order to research like how Somalis see public spaces, you design a couch space in the railway station where people could spend time.
Yeah, and that was it was a project that I had in mind since Holland, but I never did it there because of money. And then at some point in Finland, I was in a very low economical situation, but I made an application for a small funding project, and the Art Council of Finland gave me the money to do an installation in the train station, like a living room. And that was the installation that I made. Finally, it lasted for a week in the train station. It was eye-opening. It was, again, very interesting for me. It was participatory. Again, I wasn't sure how to 100% do it. So I had, again, very little support. So I was trying to read and find out how you do this kind of research. And of course, it had been done. It's just that I didn't know about it so much. But anyway, I did it.
And what happened in this living room? So you set a living room in a public space, so in the railway station, and normally in the railway station, just for people that are listening to this podcast, I want to say that, for example, in this railway station, there are many benches and they put dividers so people cannot even lay down. And you dare to put a living room there with comfy sofas and with warm colors and like different things to make people comfortable to be and hang out there. So how was it, the reaction?
Well, nowadays, that west hall of the train station has lockers. So people go and use lockers. A few years ago, there weren't lockers. So it was an open space where, people just use it to move around. I mean, you can still move around, but there were no lockers. There was no obstacles. And there were never really things to use the space for, apart from posters now and then or an exhibition. In the time of 2005, there was again nothing. There were some photo automatic machines, and I decided to put the olohone, which means living room, and I thought, of course, I was scared. So I thought that maybe it's a good idea. So I started by collecting, with the money that the Art Council of Finland had given me, I started collecting from recycled centers, furniture, whatever, mat, pillows, carpets, flower pots, books. So I went to the city library in Helsinki, and they had a very big space of books that they were throwing away. And they told me, just choose whatever you want. And I just did. And I, put some that I could. Well, I did all that. And I also used music, thinking that music and some kind of soundscape would have an effect in people's experience of that space. And I wanted to try to see. I was going to that space. And yeah, that space also had around it a rope, protective rope, that I had put in the first day before it was ready for public. And then in the second day, I realized that people actually liked it. So when it was open, so then I kept it, and it became like a territorialized space with that rope that the station gave me. What shall I say? There were I really had invited symbolically Somalis, but they didn't show up, and very few, very few, and some people gave me a very great idea why it might have not happened. That they felt like they would be in a window wall. How do you call it?
Like in the zoo, like in a vitrine, like
in a vitrine,
a window display, yeah.
In a window display. So they might have felt that, so they didn't show up.
But how did you, because you say that you invited them symbolically.
Yes. Well, first of all, I wrote an invitation that was sent around and was distributed in public spaces around the train station. I thought I even took some to the suburbs. I'm not sure, but I think I did. Anyway, and it was in Somali, in Swedish, in English, no, not English, and in Finnish and Russian. So not English. Okay, it was in all these 4 languages, but only English. And it was about telling people what it is about, more or less. Like, what is this? Is it an art exhibition, or is it something that you can just use? And nothing more, because in fact, it was something like that. I wasn't even sure what it was. People can just use it. There was no fee. They didn't have to pay anything. There was some days water, but they were drinking so much water from the automatic machines that I couldn't afford it. So I had to take the automatic machines away. And they could get the books, from the bookcase freely.
So people were using, people were...
Yeah. They were coming, and they were coming late, and then there were also people that they were coming frequently, and they were even after work or after late at night shifts. And there were, of course, homeless people that you could see sleeping on the couch with a book upside down. And there were all these cases. There were so many cases. I was going to this exhibition 4 or 5 times a day. I don't remember now. I don't remember. Maybe 4 or 5 days every day. And I was sitting for an hour. I was taking photos. I was talking to people if I could. I was making whatever I could, find out. I didn't know how to document all that richness, because there was richness. And of course, there were many people that they just wanted to be alone. You don't want to be in the center, as you said, in a vitrine. So many were like that, and others were eating their lunch. Others were waiting for the train, and yeah. So, but I managed to do something of that, and there were also some people that they were willing to talk.
And then I guess with all your pictures, notes, and everything, you analyze all this because that was part of your research, right?
Yeah. It became part of a chapter, the last chapter of the dissertation, without being planned, really.
Okay. And what did you discover there?
Well, that was the main thing, that people need these kind of spaces, and they need them, and they will ask for them, and they will talk about them, but at the end they will not make big deal to have them. They will not make the big deal because they think that it's maybe too much, or is it too personal, or is it, I don't know. But that's what I realized, that although people like the idea of Olohune very much, I don't think they could live with it all the time. I don't know.
And did you have any kind of feedback?
I remember very few, actually, but I remember one homeless person who told me that this was a dream to have, like a dreamy space in the center of the city, to be able to chill out like that, and have, I had vartija, I had the guards, and the guards weren't supposed to be interfered, although they did get interfered. But anyway, they were supposedly politer. Okay. So that was one homeless comment. A man who wrote to me an email after some time was quite amazing, because he told me the story of how he spent his time in that space. So he tried to find my email address, and then he sent me like his impression, and it was quite something to have it, and it is published. And then a third person was a woman who wrote to me 5 years after.
Wow, 5 years after. And what did he say?
Well, she was saying she will never forget it, and that she would always it's one of the things that she would like to do again in life, this kind of installation, to do it somewhere with some people, to repeat it.
Yeah. So after that, you were very interested to research on the feminization of public space. So what could be this idea of designing, taking into account gender issues?
Well, of course, gender issues were always there. It's just that I became maybe more confident in talking about them, because becoming more and more gay, it's a process, to realize what you are and what you can do and what you can say, and screw the stupid assholes that they think otherwise. So at the end, at some point after the PhD, I got into a very dark period of 5 years of unemployment, and it was about intercultural public space. So it was again about the immigrant and the foreign, but in this case, it was more on a positive aspect. So it wasn't so much how there is discrimination in public space, but how there can be some kind of integration or interculturalism involved. And Canada was my case study, and it was a very positive study. But now that I see it, I can see that, yeah, there were some good results from that, but those results were actually for later. I mean, they came up later. I don't know, maybe because I was alone for that postdoc, like I did whatever I want again, and because I worked in Helsinki and Toronto, in both places with new people.
Yes, I remember that you did an installation in Toronto, right? With young people.
Yes. So, and that was after the postdoc, to be honest. It was a year after the postdoc. So, what happened was that I really worked with people that I didn't know before in two department universities that I didn't know anything about before. And so I was totally open, and I felt like, okay, yeah, these are now things that maybe can be important in a couple of years, but right now it's maybe not formed. It's not established, which I'm not sure actually if it was true. But anyway, so I talked about interculturalism as something that brings different cultures together, and you don't have one top of each other, but you have a connection. You have
a convivial thing, no?
Something more together. And of course, in Toronto, you have a lot of those kind of community spaces. And it was also a period of time that there was a conservative government that was closing down libraries or thinking to close down libraries in Toronto or in Canada. So there was a lot of upheaval about it. How you are to close these spaces because people are going homeless, people are going, in these libraries. So it was a very interesting thing for me, but I don't know if it helped me academically. That's what I mean. So when I finished these 3 years of the postdoc, I spent 5 years unemployed. And actually unemployed, like I was getting the KELA, social security benefits, okay, and then I would do some courses at the universities, mostly Helsinki University actually. So not Aalto that I had graduated, but Helsinki University, and they will be all about public space, exclusion, inclusion. As I had reached the postdoc years, I had become also more positive in my teaching, so I was more into interculturalism than multiculturalism and diversity that I was before. Before I was more about diversity. Then it became more about interculturalism, more about connection. Well, after 5 years of being unemployed and emotionally really a rug, I managed to get a small position at the Aalto University, and it was just soon after it had changed its establishment as Aalto University that we have nowadays, with 3 big schools involved. I think 3. Anyway, and there at Aalto, I became a kind of a teacher of a program that was new, master program on urban studies and planning. And that was pretty much ideal to me. But of course, financially and professionally, very, basic. But still, it was something that I had not before, so it was important.
But something that came in this conversation very strongly is that how these periods of unemployment have also been turns in your research, right? Because you say that now you were more positive. And sometimes in when we are doing research, a lot is about
negative.
Yes, it is about the criticism, right?
Yes, you're right. You're right. I totally agree, and I see it, and I saw it earlier on as a student myself when I was doing PhD and finishing. And I could see young PhD students starting, and they were totally critical. And of course, I was an older PhD student of, it took me 7 years to finish. But for instance, afterwards as well, I see it even nowadays, how PhD students become critically by profession, like I have to criticize, and then all the positive vibes, all the rest is kind of put aside because it doesn't have the same value and the same worth, which is not true. I think, I believe.
But for example, there is something that in design, I don't know, probably it is the same in architecture, that because we are planners, that we are people doing interventions and doing new things, we are always super positive, right? Because we believe that in our new design, in our new building, it's going to be the solution or some kind of solution for something.
That's why you have the difference between the researcher and the practitioner. So the practitioner is the positive one who wants to do things, and then you have the academic, the researcher, who just tries to find mistakes that are happening, and we have to point them out and change them.
Well, this is why it is interesting when researchers do things, right? Because you were setting up a living room. So in a way, you said it, and at the same time, you criticize it. I mean, you use it as a research tool, right? Because your living room is a way to research.
Yes, and of course, after I created it, or it wasn't my first. I'm sure it wasn't my idea or original. But anyway, after it was created, I found out that there were more examples created around Europe, like in Sweden, from IKEA even. They made olohunes, and so because I didn't copyrighted it, of course.
So, but you didn't tell me about this feminization of public space.
No, it started just after the postdoc, and in that 5 years period of unemployment, where I started, you read and write other things, and I was reading and writing about another research application that I wanted to make with the Academy of Finland or European projects, and that was about public space and feminization. And it was about how half of the population of the Earth actually uses public spaces with extra carefulness and with extra care because of their own safety, for their own safety. So you had half of the population who, just used it and did whatever they wanted, and half of the population who had to actually still take care what they do for their safety. And that became more and more, I kind of read a lot about it. Well, I read about it, and I saw how, for instance, in Finland, people who do work with this kind of public spaces take a lot of extra care of lighting. So the public lighting becomes very important. And I thought that this is a very good point. But I haven't seen it that much, for one thing. And then the second, that it's not enough. At this day and age, and having climate situations like in Finland, to have a bit better light is not enough. So I started thinking about what is the dialogue between women researchers and feminist researchers in about public space. And it wasn't that great, I must say. So that's how it started, and it could have continued, but I never got the funding. Other did so I hope that some other people might have done things or will do things that will be just not more just lighting of public spaces, and where actually we'll talk about equality in Finland in reality, not just equality in equal pay, more or less, or that we don't use politically unacceptable terms, but we actually believe in others and in each other and in our equality, which I don't see yet.
And now, if you could have 1 year more of life and a lot of money, what would be the project that you could be interested in making?
Well, it's been some time, years now, that I've been trying to get a project about public space, or feminized public space, or feminine positive public space, where I would not only talk about how to make, the public space look and feel more feminine and more attachable to women, as mothers, as, mainly as mothers, but also as workers, as people with maybe less physical power than men, which means that they are not women are not as physically empowered to deal with the serious situations, mainly. So I wouldn't like to do only that. I wouldn't like to do that much, actually. I would like to see how the public space can be designed so that it just includes all these values,
And which values are you talking about?
like the life. Yeah, I mean, life. When I hear a women talking about life, you hear different kind of stories and different kind of values, because there is the value of love of children. That's very deep, and I think it's not as common as in men's world. And we have accepted it after, I don't know, centuries and centuries, that this can be pretty well private thing, and that kind of agonism and struggle and, walk and run and achieve, that can be more public because it's, it shows the potency. So this kind of interesting, this kind of issues between it's culture. I know it's constructed, socially constructed through ages, but because it's constructed through ages, I find it also very interesting that very few people actually challenge them. Very educated people just take them for granted, or I think they do. I don't know. So that's how life is. There is gendered space, men, women. The men are like taught to live like that and behave like that in public spaces, and women are like taught and behave like that in public space. And I think that this is wrong to continue unchallenged. And when I see youngsters now, boys with makeup and girls with whatever, I feel interested. I feel I feel there is a hope that, okay, things can actually be challenged, can be upheld, no, well, challenged for their values. I don't know if this will really happen and take off as a social movement or as a design movement. I really don't know, because I know that we are very patriarchal. We are very much depending on what men think, and you can see that on television, in board meetings, and you can see that in wherever, 2 women, 10 men, all black, no color. I mean, that's another thing that I have with myself, because I'm colorful and I'm thinking that color is really important to have in our lives. And very few people do, but very, very. And I think it's ridiculous. The more serious, supposedly, the position, the less color you have to wear. Anyway,
And even designers, right? Because designers, they are the ones that we are supposed to be more creative, and instead, like, we are well known for using black.
yes, absolutely. And you have architects that they are actually kind of proud of it, that they will stick to black. Anyway, I used to be like that too, but I'm 52, maybe because of the cancer, who knows. But I think the last few years I've stopped with black. I used to wear black a lot. Well, it's life, and I can tell you I don't know. I maybe became very serious now. I really don't think that there will be a lot of quick change in the design. I find it very positive that there are all these micro worlds that exist, and micro worlds that they do things, and they push the envelope of design ahead. But I think it's going to be a very difficult process. And to be honest, I'm not that unhappy that I'm terminally ill.
But if you want to, now that we are talking about illness and everything, if you would have to give it an advice to Michail when he just finished his first degree, what would you say to a young person? Because most of the people that listen to this podcast, they are like young designers, and they are starting to study, or they are like finishing their first degree in design.
It's one of the most difficult questions one can ask, especially older people, because younger people will definitely have things to say about, be enthusiastic, be this.
Yeah, but it's like as a letter to oneself, right? Like,
Well, I know, Mariana, honestly, I think that the experience one gets by life itself, you can't change it,
with external advice.
or internal even, because you don't know what is going to happen in your life. You're young, you have a lot of dreams, you have knowledge that you collect. Then you might be lucky to have the social capital that is necessary to advance in some career issues, and then all the rest is coming, slowly appearing around, and that affects the way you become a designer, for instance. Of course, your character, your personality is important there, but it's not the only thing that counts. And then life goes on, years go by, and then you reach at some point being 40, 50, 60 with 2, 3 kids, and thinking, okay, did I manage to do what I wanted to do when I was 25? To my understanding, as I'm now 52 and a cancer patient, I tell you this: it doesn't matter if it counts. What you wanted to do in 25 and what you did at 50, it doesn't matter to be the same, because it's life, and we should leave it. You shouldn't live in regrets, and you shouldn't think, oh, what did I do right?
We did what we could, and also I don't even remember what I wanted at 25.
Well, I wanted a dentistry, archaeology, yeah, whatever, whatever.
But something that we came on repeating in this interview, or that came up very many times, is the issue of the social capital, no, and how social capital is crucial in the development of a professional career. Are there special things that you think that has helped you to build on this social capital, like being part of a network of a community in the university, or something special? Because for me, for example, it's very clear that I have grown my social capital after starting this podcast, for example, because I get to know more what is going on from others, and I learned, I kind of grow up the community around me, no, that it's not only the my dear friends with who I have been working and study, but now I have contact with other colleagues with who I collaborate all the time.
Absolutely. But I think you're one of the instinctive social capitalist expanders, because you have such energy and power, and yeah, well, it's amazing. So there are different cases, Mariana. You are one of these people that you are a kind of a leader in this field that you are at. We're not all like that. So we're different capacities.
In this interview, Michail tells how he moved from architecture to design. We know that many listeners to this podcast have done big movements in their careers. Podcasts are supporting continuous actualization and lifelong learning. This is why young designers and newcomers to the design field are active listeners. Many of our design colleagues have not studied design, but biology, sociology, or anthropology. We do a lot of interviews to designers coming from different fields because we want to learn from them. We want to better understand their vision of design and their ways of enacting this practice. We have a list, for example, on design and anthropology because there is many designers working in this intersection. They have been lately an inspiration, a breeze of fresh air to our community. Other food of thought in this podcast has been the personal influences in our professional lives. Michail brought this in a clear and concise way, telling his personal story combined with the professional one, telling us about his family and place of birth. Many of our professional turns relate to our personal interests, but also personal moments in life. We could reflect more on this, and in coming podcasts, we will do it. We always want to know who is listening to us, so you can communicate with us through our social media channels. Let us know what do you think about having interviews in English, how your personal life has influenced your profession, or whatever reflection that came from listening. We want to listen to you. As always, the music of this podcast is by Antonio Zimmerman, sound design is by Julian Pereira. This podcast is published with Creative Commons licenses with attributions. This is Diseño in Diaspora. You can follow us on our social media channels in YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter, or visit our website. Remember to recommend us and recommend our books. Let's listen to the next one.